Hello and welcome to another episode of The New Journey, a show that inspires and empowers new Canadians through conversations, insights, and knowledge. Today we have a very special guest who will be joining us from BC, and British Columbia has emerged as one of the most innovative tech hubs in Canada and in the world. If there's one person who is championing this cause and who has seen the transformation up close, it is Raghwa Gopal. Thank you for joining us, Raghwa.
Thank you for having me here. I'm very excited to be here to have this
Perfect. Excellent. From a 20-year-old newcomer to now leading the tech sector in BC, Raghwa Gopal is a serial entrepreneur, started, grown, and sold numerous businesses. And we are very pleased to have you on the show, Raghwa. Walk us through your initial journey as a newcomer in Canada.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to share a bit about that. So I was born, raised, and educated in a very small country island of Fiji in the South Pacific. At that time, when I left at the age of 20, I think the population of the country was around 600,000 people, and it's about 1 million right now. So, come from a very small place. Grew up in a very small village of about 60 people. Both my parents were uneducated, so they were illiterate. Somebody call it, I call it uneducated, not because they weren't smart or anything like that. It's just they didn't have an opportunity to go to school, so they didn't get any education. And both my parents were very poor family. They had 8 kids, so I have 8 siblings. So 10 of us living on a farm. It was pretty difficult, pretty poor. There was no other income other than the farm income. But both my parents were sort of visionaries. They figured that education was the only way out of poverty, and they made sure that all of the children, they would get them educated as much as they can. So I'm sixth in line, and my 5 elder siblings, got educated up to grade 5, grade 6, and then they had to, at that point, either work on the farm or go find some other employment. When I got to grade 5, basically, my parents said, there is no more. We can't afford to, continue your education because there's 3 other children that they needed to get them through some education, and I had to work on the farm. But I forced myself at that time. I was doing pretty well in school. I was a good student, getting good marks. I didn't want to not continue my education, so I forced myself to find a job at a local grocery store, washing dirty bottles for a very small amount of money. And through that, I was able to continue my education for a few more years. And that particular employer really, got a liking to me. He liked what I was doing, my honesty, my hard work, my dedication to his work while I was still getting educated. And he basically took it upon himself to get me educated all the way through university. So I was very lucky to have found somebody in my life that was that generous and provided me that opportunity. Studied computer science in Fiji, and my dad had passed away when I was 18. So my brother was in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada at that time, and he, after I graduated, he figured he wanted me, myself, and my mom and my sister to come and join him here, thinking that'd be better opportunity for me as a software engineer, just graduated. So I very early in March 1979, my mother, myself, and my younger sister migrated to Kelowna, British Columbia, pretty small town at that time. Unfortunately for me, having a computer engineering software background, there was no businesses, there was no technology companies, no software companies here in Kelowna. So my only, and not only, we were so poor that I had come to Canada with $300 with me. Luckily, I had my brother here that I could live with, and he was a huge support. But I had for me to get a job in the line that I was educated and trained in, I would have to move some other place. But I was, again, very lucky enough here in Kelowna to find a local Canadian, Kelowna-born individual that was a chartered accountant that had a computer system, and I just got to meet him by chance, and we started talking, and he gave me an opportunity for us to co-found the very first technology or software company in this little town called Kelowna, British Columbia. So this is March 1979. So I was very lucky that this individual, Mike Schleppy, came in my life and provided me an opportunity, to be get employment and be an entrepreneur. So from 1979, Mike, my business partner, who's my lifelong friend, we started building that business. It was pretty hard. When I first arrived here in Kelowna, there were very few people of color here. So Kelowna, even today, is probably one of the most conservative cities in the entire country. Even though we have a pretty large population now of diverse people. So it was very difficult, for me individually. Having a business partner that was local, was very open-minded, was a huge benefit. But just a small town with that conservative approach, it was pretty hard. We got a lot of racial issues. People used to call me Paki all the time. I had never didn't even know what Paki or Pakistan meant, because I grew up in a small Pacific Island nation. But those kind of things. So, but we overcame all of that. I decided that I wasn't going to focus on that negativity. I was just going to continue to work with everybody, talk to everybody, educate everybody as much as I could.
Yeah.
And so we together, my business partner and I, continued to work very hard. And we grew that business over the next 10 years from 1979 to 1989 to become one of Canada's fastest growing a company that provided software and services to local governments, and almost become sort of the number one provider of software solutions to local governments all across Canada. So pretty interesting story, from starting from scratch to getting to be, fairly widely known company in Canada in that space. So that kind of takes me to, starting that business, building that business. And I sold my business, first one in 2001. And from that point onwards, because when I was building that business, when we wanted to hire people, there was not too many people in Kelowna that I could hire. So all of the people had to be hired from Vancouver, Toronto, Halifax, Montreal, some other place. So as I was building my business, I tried to not just kind of work on my business, but I tried to entice and convince and cajole some other businesses in the tech industry to come and locate in Kelowna. So we have a bit of a cluster. And by 2000, I think there were probably about 50 businesses and a few hundred people working in this industry. So we started to build a bit of a cluster. And then from 2001 on, after I sold my business, I basically focused 100% on building that tech ecosystem in the Okanagan region. So I became an investor. I invested in over 50 companies. Anybody had an idea, anywhere from $5,000 to $500,000 I invested on a good idea. I started doing a lot of mentoring for free, for volunteer basis. I'd sold my business. I'd done very well. I really didn't need to work. So I just started to become a mentor, at the college, at the university, mentoring anybody else that needed mentoring. And I was working more as a volunteer than when I was running my own business. So there were so many people wanting to talk because everybody had an idea and they didn't know what to do. And I just kept talking. And then I talked to a few of my friends that were in a similar space as me. Made good money, retired, but they had very good knowledge, very good connections. So I got them involved to help me with this, volunteer mentorship basis. And through that, we created, an organization called Accelerate Okanagan. in 2009, 2010. And then we had a place where people could come. We had a bunch of mentors that would sit down and work with them and take them through the entire process of building a business, mostly done for free.
Yeah.
So just to keep the story short and recap it, it's become very, very successful. And today, Kelowna, the Okanagan region, has become a model, not just for British Columbia, but for Canada, of a place where you can transform that. So the whole region, which has been the main economy here, has been agriculture since inception, 150 years or so. In the last 30 or 40 years, tourism started to really take shape because of the wineries and the beautiful lakes and golf courses and resorts we have. So agriculture was sort of the bread and butter economy. Tourism started to become sort of the number 2 economy. But over the last 10 years, technology and innovation has become larger than agriculture and tourism combined. So today, there's over 1,000 technology companies in the region. There's about 15,000 workers, and it's aiding about $2 billion in the economy. It has a $2 billion economic impact. So it's been a hugely success story, and I'm very proud to be one of those folks that have helped create that.
Yeah, awesome. That's an inspiring story that you shared with us. We'll come back to the Accelerate Okanagan story in a bit, but I wanted to go back to your, you mentioned you started your tech business in Canada with a co-founder who gave you the opportunity. What were those initial days starting the company? Just, what were you doing these initial days? What sort of challenges you had when you were growing that company? And were there any support systems that you tapped into, to grow the company initially when you had just moved to Canada?
Yeah, first of all, they weren't compared to today, and 40 some years ago when I started, there weren't much support systems. So there weren't these things called angel networks or angels that we could go to, borrow money or get equity in the company. There wasn't this, organizations that provided, mentorship. So if I wanted to run something by with somebody that had more experience, those things didn't exist. So it was very terrifying, to be honest. Young 20-year-old, but luckily my business partner was 10 years older than me and had been around and had a lot of experience. So I leaned on him a lot for that. But it was a lot of hard work, to me, when I started the business, it wasn't about, number of hours or number of days. It was, 15, 16, up to 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. Both of us were just working to build the business really hard. Again, not having all these resources made it a little difficult. If we were in a different era where we could get an injection of, say, $200,000 or $300,000, our growth trajectory would have been way faster. It wouldn't have taken us like 5 years to get to where we could have gone in a year. So everything took a little bit longer because we didn't have that. I couldn't go get a loan. The biggest problem that I had personally, I had no asset. I had zero money, no asset, no collateral to leverage, any loan or anything in the business. So that was a huge challenge. So the only way, so when you run into those challenges, you don't give up. You don't stop. So, I sat down and said, I can't get that. I don't, I didn't have rich relatives. I only had one brother here that was, also working and supporting his family. So I didn't have that angle. Didn't know anybody else. So basically you sit down and kind of, with a very clear mind think, what are your options? You kind of put down all your different options and you just look at what works. And for me, it was just, you got to just work hard. You just got to keep building. And that was the only way, make some more money, invest, make some more money, invest. And that's how we were able to grow the company.
Perfect. And you also talked about, mentoring that you started doing after you, sold your previous business. Did you had any mentors to support you in the business other than your partner, or was it mostly, figuring out the solutions yourself, trial and testing, and then, finding the solution yourself?
No, so first of all, I was very lucky that I had my business partner as a mentor for the every and even until today. I mean, he's still my mentor. So if I if I'm thinking of something, I usually kind of phone him up and talk to him.
Okay.
So, but what had happened as I was growing the business, we got connected to different companies. One of the companies was Digital Equipment Corporation, which became bought by Hewlett Packard. So pretty large organization, and we were buying stuff with them, and I made really good connections with some folks there, and they were very experienced. They had been around the world, so then I found another mentor. So I was somebody there that I really liked, I trusted, had a good relationship with. That became a mentor. Then there was a customer of mine, somebody that I had in the municipality, that we had sold our software and services, where I used to go and train them, find out if everything was working well and doing well. He was the treasurer of that municipality. Again, a very experienced individual that we really got to like each other, and that became my mentor. I was pretty honest with both of these folks. I said, you know what, you guys have way more experience. You're older, you have way more experience, way more knowledge. You have way more connections than I have. So, can I reach out to you and talk to you? And they both were like totally open. Oh yeah, Raghwa, anytime, if you need something. And I you would not believe how many times I reached out to them for, do you know somebody? Do you know XYZ? Can you connect me to that? Or what do you think about this? So I had 2 or 3 individuals that were amazing, and I still continue to utilize that.
Okay, perfect. And as you were growing your businesses, you successfully sold your business. What other sort of logistical operational challenges you had? You mentioned that hiring was a big problem in those initial days. Were there other challenges, like in terms of financing or finding people to work with?
For us, just because of the location and the time when there weren't that many people that were graduating through the program that we needed, so that was a huge challenge. And then hiring people from outside, even look at a company today that's say based in Vancouver, and if they're hiring people from Toronto, that's a challenge, because no matter how much phone interviews and video interviews you do, you still want them to come to and meet your team, right? So it's all the time and expense. Just imagine we had tenfold issue because of the time in the era we were in. So that was a big issue. But the bigger issue was the access to capital, access to money, I think was as bigger as of an issue for us as talent, because you need money sometimes to do a little bit extra to grow, and if you don't have it in the right time, it's a different challenge. So those were the 2 big issues for us. I can't hear you. I think you're on mute. Oops, there you go.
Sorry about that. How do you see the tech sector in this region now? As there's, you talked about Accelerate Okanagan, which is now the role model, if you call it, in all of the world, basically. I was running an accelerator in the Fraser Valley as well a couple of years ago. And one of the organizations that we were looking up to is Accelerate Okanagan. And I had good discussions with the CEO of Accelerate Okanagan as well. Where do you think it stands right now in terms of other regions and the tech hubs in Canada? And what was those things that made it what it is right now? That you think were the reason behind Accelerate Okanagan being the role model now?
Yeah, I think there's two or three really key components for I think any area to be as successful as Accelerate Okanagan. So first and foremost, you need to have very passionate community members to drive that. So that's a very key component. Like,
Yeah,
and we were lucky. I mean, I know I kind of dedicated my life to that, right?
yeah,
100% of my time and energy, and then I had many other like-minded people that listened to my story and bought into it and were
yeah,
totally dedicated in helping. So I think that community support is I think fundamental in getting going. So you don't need hundreds, but you still need a
yeah,
few that are very passionate and dedicated in driving something. That's number one. And secondly, I think you need to get things going off the ground. You need support from the government. I don't
yeah,
think community can do it themselves. And again, we were very lucky. So first of all, we had the community support that was very fundamental. And the second step then is getting a bit of resources and funding from the government to get you started. So we were very lucky. Both the federal government and both the provincial government anteed up, provided us the money for us to be able to have the space to be able to hire people that can actually do the administration and stuff like that. Those were the
yeah,
two things. And then after that, everything starts to come together because you need. And again, there's a few key components that you need to have a very successful ecosystem. You
yeah,
need to have those two things that I talked about, but you also need the support of academia. So if we have really good college or university around, getting them involved because they're a humongous amount of resource. There's
yeah,
some amazing, brilliant people doing research and other stuff that you should be part of the ecosystem. But you
yeah,
also need industry as well. So, all of the large companies and lawyers and accountants.
yeah,
And then the last part is your local government. So whether it's the regional district or the city or the Economic Development
yeah,
Commission, all of them kind of should come together. And that's what you see in Kelowna. All of these organizations
yeah,
have come together. At one point, everybody was sort of a little bit on the own, you know, silos,
yeah,
and we're a bit protective of kind of sharing what was going
yeah,
on, right?
yeah.
But when they can open up and they can see a bigger picture that, together as a whole, we can do 10 times as much as individually.
Mhm.
That's the key. That's the recipe right there that can make a very successful ecosystem. And Okanagan has that.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that. So what I got from you is community support, resources from both the federal and the local governments, academia, and the industry are critical to building an ecosystem like Accelerate Okanagan.
Absolutely. Hit it right on the head. Exactly. Those are
Perfect.
components that are needed.
Awesome. Switching back to the startup scene in Canada right now, and specifically in BC, because you now lead Innovate BC. What's currently happening in the tech sector? There's unicorns that are being announced on almost a monthly basis or weekly basis, if I'm not too wrong. But where do you see the tech landscape in BC right now as it stands of today?
Well, I think we've never had it any better. And I'll start with just sort of the building blocks. So as far as the startup ecosystem goes, where people have amazing, great ideas, and they're taking those ideas and doing some prototyping and trying to prove it out, and then creating a small business. We're number one in the world. We do the best job in that. There's a lot of this great amount of innovators, people that are thinking about innovating
Yeah,
and have great ideas. There's a great amount of support, government support, both at all levels, to make sure that those ideas are supported into at least validating if it's a viable business or not, and if it is viable business to continue. So we're number one in the world. We're doing very, very well. It's unbelievable. We have a problem scaling companies, so that's an area that
hmm,
we're kind of still working on. So, some a business that's 10 people roughly, doing $1 to $2 million in annual
yeah,
recurring revenues, that's fine. But we're getting difficulty taking those business from 10 people doing $2 million in annual recurring revenues to growing them to 50 people and $50 million in annual recurring revenues. That's a gap right now.
Yeah.
So that's an area that we need to focus on with. But what has really happened in British Columbia over the last few years, and this last year was a good example, like you mentioned, we've never had this kind of growth on the larger companies. Last year we had, I think, 12 or 13 unicorns. One unicorn, which is a company with a $1 billion valuation, almost every month. That's historic. It's never happened in British Columbia in that time span. And I think that's going to continue. And there's a number of sectors where we're leading. We're actually world class. And there are other sectors where we're actually starting to do really well as well. So it's very promising for British Columbia. But I think whole entire Canada is actually probably doing very similar in terms of where we stand.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that. And as part of the Innovate BC, there are many support services, many resources that you provide to startup founders, to companies that are looking to scale. Can you tell us a bit about those support services and the resources that are provided by Innovate BC? And my next question is going to follow up on this. So I'll let you just jump in with your insights into as to what Innovate BC is currently doing for startups and the founders.
Absolutely. There's just to simplify for people to kind of maybe grasp what we do is, I'm just going to say there's three different sort of areas where we provide support. The first one is on talent development. The second thing is on business development or mentorship. And then the third one is on technology adoption. So if you look at the first one, which is talent development, we have three programs, very good programs right now that we do. So first of all, there's a program called ISI, Innovator Skills Initiative. So any employer that hires a student from a post-secondary institution for a 4 or 6 month work integrated learning work term, we, Innovate BC, will pay the employer up to $10,000 to cover the initial cost and salaries of this student to work in your business. So it's a win-win for both. So the student gets real life working experience. And for the employer, they get somebody that can help them out, but it doesn't cost them too much money because we cover the first $10,000 worth of expenses. So that's one program. We're going to be putting we're placing 3,000 students into these work experience or work integrated learning program. The other one is called DS4Y, Digital Skills for Youth program.
Okay.
This program is totally dedicated to underrepresented groups. So for youth, between 16 and 29 years old, if they're looking for a job and an employer wants to hire them, train them for a technology job, we will cover up to first 6 months of salary up to $26,000.
Oh, wow.
We would also cover $5,000 worth of training costs. So if the employer, assume an employer hires people of color or indigenous folk or women or LGBTQ youth, and then they want them to get trained on digital marketing or cybersecurity or something, and the training cost is $4,000 or $5,000. We'll cover the first $5,000 of training cost, and any additional cost of travel and living and all of that up to $5,000. So that's a very comprehensive program, and we're putting, placing, I think, close to 200 youth into work environment as well. Our hope is the employer will hire them, get them trained, and then they get all of this, most of the, I would say about 90 to 100% of the expenses covered, and then they continue to hire them going forward. And then we're doing the third one. I won't take too much time. I'll try and summarize it because we have too many programs. But the third one is called, we've partnered with an organization called Palette Skills. So we're taking people that have been displaced in other sectors like forestry or mining. So they were working there. They probably got laid off for whatever reason. So we're taking those people, finding employees in that will hire them, whether it's in digital marketing, sales, or some other activities. So we'll take these people, we'll use those employees to train them. And then once they're trained, they actually get hired by their employers. So that's another sort of a reskilling program that we have. That's on the talent development side. On the mentorship side, if anybody has an idea,
Yeah.
right? And when I had an idea, I had no idea where to go, right? So I had a business partner that knew a bit about being an accountant. He knew a lot about business. So I was lucky. But if I didn't have him, I wouldn't even know how to incorporate a company. What contract, shareholder agreements, all of that kind of meant.
Yeah.
So we support, Innovate BC supports 10 agencies all around the province. So we have one in Nanaimo, Victoria, Prince George, Kamloops, Kelowna, Trail, and a number of them in the Lower Mainland. These agencies have all of these people and mentors that will so you just go to one of these places, like Accelerate Okanagan is one. So if you're in the Okanagan region, if you had an idea, you don't have to think too much. Just go to Accelerate Okanagan. Somebody there will handhold you through of what to do, what the next steps are, where to go find money, how to do your prototyping, where to go and find people that you can hire. So they'll take you through the entire process. So we have 10 of those agencies that we fund and support that will help you. So that's on the mentorship side. There are others as well, but I'll keep it to that. And then the last part on the technology adoption is with this pandemic, you probably found a lot of these mom and pop shops, pizza places, massage parlors, butcher shops. They were out of business because they didn't have any digital presence. There was no way to take orders online. There was no way to take payments online. There was no way to have a delivery mechanism. So last year we helped 3,000 companies. We sat down and we provided services to figure out where they were and then help them build their website. The menus online, payment systems, delivery mechanisms as well. So we do a lot on the tech adoption side, and we're going to continue to do that. So those are sort of the three buckets of programs. I've just kind of summarized it. There's a few more that we do. So we do a lot for the entire ecosystem.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And I see a number of resources and very practical resources that employers can utilize. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, and for your audience, anybody that's listening, should make sure that you utilize. So these are programs that are there for you. Make sure you utilize it.
Perfect. I'll definitely put a link to the Innovate BC website and the programs there as well for our audience to check out the services that are provided. I also wanted to talk about, the newcomers. You came as a newcomer to Canada, early in your career. There are a lot of newcomers that are coming to Canada right now. They have skills that are transferable. At the same time, there's a huge, labor crunch in the market right now. So what do you think is the gap which is happening? Because on one side, we have newcomers who are unable to find jobs in Canada. They have to either, reskill, or they have to, go to a school, or learn some new skills. And on the flip side, we have employers who have jobs, but they can find people here as well. What do you think is the gap? Why is the gap happening in this space here?
Yeah, I think there's multiple things going on at the same time. First of all, there's a mindset, there's a psychological issue from the employer's point of view. I'm being very honest. Yeah. And the mindset issue is that if somebody is new, somebody has just arrived from Canada, say from India or Fiji or Poland, South Africa, as a software engineer, the mindset is that they're just because they didn't graduate here, that they would be of equal quality, which is totally wrong, because I see people and I meet a lot of newcomers who are actually, very well versed. Like, they have sometimes better skills than people that have graduated here. But there's that mindset, that barrier. That's number one. So that's the issue where when a newcomer approaches an employer, there's a bit of that mindset, and I'll talk about how we can overcome some of that. And then from the newcomer point of view, and I being a newcomer, when you come here, you really don't know where to go. Yeah. And what you're doing right now, Govind, is just amazing. Like to at least provide all of these newcomers, some of the resources, or just places where they can actually go and talk to people. I think it's fantastic. So a lot of time they just don't know. But if they can connect with organization like you as yours as an example, and then be able to say, if I'm looking for a job, this is potentially, I don't know, these are not maybe employers, but maybe these are agencies where they can go get names of other employers, or just high level where opportunities are. Or if I want to get some education, this is the places where there's short courses I can take. So for newcomers should try and find organizations or websites like yours, and really see what the resources are, and don't be afraid to reach out and research and apply. So that's one thing. To overcome that mindset, the psychology of some of the employers, which is changing, so it's going in the right direction. And previously it was kind of hard, no. Now it's at least that people are willing to talk, and I think over the next while it will just become, it just will happen. For newcomers to, when they come here, is to find, there's a lot of the colleges in your community have short courses. So if you have just even one online or a short course, so if I am a dental hygienist, as an example, I'll just give you a quick example there. You just arrived from different countries, and you're looking for a job here. While you connect to these organizations to find where the opportunities are and which employers are hiring, you do that. But in the meantime, if you could go online and just find a quick course on dental hygiene in Canada that talks about the local lingos, some of the local customs, some of the localized issues around that particular job. It won't, a few hours worth maybe will give you a lot more. So now when you're getting an opportunity for interview with the employer, you'll be much more versed in talking about the local way of what's happening rather than what you learned back in your home country. I think that bridges that gap. So if you're in the software, or if you're in technology, do the same thing, right? Just try and figure out what's happening locally. And then, so when you're talking to the employer, and if you can start to say things that the employer says, this guy's versed in the current climate, I think that will work. When you don't do that, it becomes a little difficult to overcome that.
Perfect. I think you summarized it beautifully as to what are the things that the newcomers need to know. Lastly, I would like to get your advice. What advice would you give to newcomers and new Canadians who are thinking of launching their own companies or launching their startups in any field, in any industry? What's your top three inputs to them or advice to them that you would suggest?
Number one, first and foremost, find somebody through your family connections, through your neighbors, through your bank, lawyers, accountants, or somebody, or through your school, parents association. Find somebody that you can talk to that has a bit, almost like finding a mentor, but somebody that has some experience or knowledge in the particular business that you want to go to. So as an example, I just arrived and I want to start a trucking company. Rather than just kind of going and doing it myself, talk to people. Do you know somebody that can just, give me half an hour of the time or an hour? Then, and once you connect with somebody like that, that half an hour or an hour could be hugely beneficial. They can provide you some really good guidance of what you need to do. There's many people that will do that very, very openly and very, very freely if you ask. So that's the first thing, is just making sure that you talk to somebody that knows. Second thing, that and this is where I'm trying to be a huge advocate of newcomers or recent immigrants to be able to know what's out there in terms of resources. There are a lot of government resources that will help you when you're starting a business. So all of the stuff that Innovate BC does, as an example, in technology, there is similar kind of help in other areas, like Community Futures does a lot of mentorship, and they help you with the creation of your business. Economic development commissions in the different cities will totally help you, in starting the business and growing, and provide you a lot of advice and access. So and then there's a lot of grants, hiring grants, a lot of subsidies. So make sure you utilize all of those. Those are all very important components to to at least growing. And then the third one is just to make sure that stay connected with all of the right people that can continue to the professional side is what I really mean, is making sure that you have a good accountant, good lawyer, that accountant gives you proper advice on your budgeting, your forecasting, and all of that that you need. That way you're not going down 6 months or a year and then realizing that you could have done something a little bit better and much more profitable. So keeping that side as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time here, and thank you for sharing your insights. I have noted down a few points. I'm going to share it with our audience, put it in a blog format as well, so that people can read here as well. I appreciate you taking your time and sharing your journey, which is very inspiring, sharing your insights and your knowledge, about the tech landscape and for newcomers and, anybody who's looking for jobs or, launching their own startups as well. I appreciate you taking your time. Thank you so much here.
Thank you for having me.